is coming and drawing so near. The prophet's words are being fulfilled. The times and seasons are at hand for the glorious arrival of the Son of Man. As lightning flashes in the east and the west, the earth will endure the Lord's test. Be saved by his name while he can be found. Seek his face before the trumpet sound. The day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night. Before that day, keep your lamp trimmed. The day of the Lord is full of wrath. In that day, who can endure? Just to be clear, but what we saw in 2014 and 2015 was an explosion of violence, explosion of anti-Semitism, exploding of terror to provoke the Jewish people back home. I mean, you saw it as an understanding, a prophetic foreshadow of what's going to happen across the world, with anti-Semitism, with terror, to provoke the Jewish people back to Israel, just like Netanyahu called them back. I mean, it's a beautiful thing when we look at the prophetic understanding of Jeremiah's prophecy, and you look at the fishermen, the Israelis, come home, the defense minister, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and then you have the hunters that are going to provoke them back. So you have both fishermen and hunters working together to bring the people back to the promised land, and we haven't seen anything yet. I think there's going to be a major Aliyah here in the future, and we'll see what happens, but that's what the prophecy states. So now let's look at America. America is the second largest population of the Jewish people in the world, besides Israel. Again, Europe is the third, especially France. So again, we have to be a part of this understanding of what's going on in America. I love America. I'm from America. I have family who served in the military generations. So my uncle, also my grandfather, I love America, for sure. But we got to be honest, and we love God more than anything, So we love God. We serve God first. We're believers first, then Americans, Please understand that, We can't idolize America over God, We must understand that. So again, I love America. Some of this is going to be very straightforward, but it is what it is. And if you are dogmatic, or you are basically all into any politician or any previous president, then this surely will offend you, So I'm just warning you in advance that if you're so dogmatic or compromised by any politician, then number one, you can't see clear, and number two, this will offend you. Or number one, this will offend you, and number two, if any of us are so into compromise with any politician, then we will not be able to see clearly, So just keep that in mind as the election comes up, and also further elections come up in the future. So now let's talk about the Aliyah from the United States. Throughout America's unrivaled, prosperous history, the land of the free has been the safest refuge in the world for the children of Israel. Amen. From 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue from Spain to America during the Spanish Inquisition, unto today, the God of Israel has sovereignly preordained America to be a protective harbor for his chosen people until their prophetic calling to make Aliyah to the promised land. Keep that in mind. He has sovereignly preordained America to be a protective harbor for his chosen people until their prophetic calling to make Aliyah to the promised land. Beginning in the 1500s, upon its prayers and hopes of peace, prosperity, and security, a perpetual Jewish migration sailed from the Eastern world to the shores of America. In the late 1700s to 1800s, as anti-Semitism and persecution tragically increased and expanded throughout the Middle East and Europe, the Jewish population in America exponentially compounded from approximately 2,000 residents in 1790 to 15,000 by 1840. Amazingly, in 1880, which was only 4 decades later, the Jewish population increased to an estimated 250,000. From 1880 to 1914, which was the beginning of World War I, approximately 1.5 Jewish people immigrated to America from Eastern Europe as anti-Semitism and persecution continued its demonic rise in the 20th century. In 1942, the Jewish population in America was an estimated 4.3 million. and in 1970, 5.4 million. As of 2017, the Jewish population in America is an estimated 5.7 million, which is the second largest in the world. In the 20th century, the children of Israel rose to significant affluence in America, and by the end of the century, they were relatively wealthy among the citizens of America. In 1983, economist Thomas Sowell wrote, Jewish family incomes are the highest of any large ethnic group in the United States, 72% above the national average. And the social and economic distance covered in a relatively short time makes the Jewish experience in America unique. In the 1980s, Forbes magazine reported that of the 400 richest Americans, more than 100 were Jewish, a quarter of the 25%, which was 9 times greater than expectations based on the overall population. Historian Edward Shapiro estimates over 30% of American billionaires are Jewish. He also cites a 1986 issue of Financial World that listed the top 100 moneymakers in 1985, and half the people mentioned were Jewish. Incredibly, 37% of all American Nobel Peace Prize winners are Jewish. That's totally amazing. Actually, 37% of all of the American Nobel Prize winners are Jewish. According to financial experts, historians, and statistics, America has not only been a safe refuge for the children of Israel, but also a great financial blessing as well. Certainly, the children of Israel are a cornerstone fabric in American exceptionalism. Although America was not perfect when it came to massive immigration for the Jewish refugees during the diabolical Nazi Germany regime, or the rise of anti-Semitic groups within its borders during the 1900s, overall, America has given the Jewish people freedom, security, and prosperity. Amen. Additionally, America has been the greatest ally to the state of Israel since its rebirth in 1948. And the red, white, and blue has been enormously blessed and rewarded by God for its loyalty to his heritage, his land, and his people. In fact, one could argue that America's incredible expeditious ascent to the greatest superpower in world history is directly linked to its support of the Jewish state in 1948 and thereafter. Okay, so now this is a graph of the GDP, US GDP, long-term real growth in US GDP. Look at where 1948 is, look before 1948, and look after 1948, and you tell me if there's a connection between America's prosperity or not because of the state of Israel and also the Jewish people as well. I don't think it's even a conversation, to be honest with you. As the chart validates, since America's bold and unwavering recognition and support of the state of Israel in 1948 and beyond, it has not only been a beacon of freedom, but also the land of financial dreams and prosperity for all of mankind, including the Jewish people. Without question, America has been a profound blessing by God Almighty in all aspects to the children of Israel. Since this is the case, why would the Jewish people leave America to make Aliyah to Israel? It doesn't make any sense. Why would they make Aliyah to Israel if they are richly blessed in every way in America? What would provoke and encourage them to leave the land of the free? The resounding yet somber answer is found in Jeremiah's prophecy that will occur at the end of the age. In Jeremiah 16, verse 14, it says, "Therefore, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord lives who brought up the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, but the Lord lives who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands, including America, where he had driven them. For I will bring back into their land, which I gave to their fathers." And then he tells us how he's going to do it. He says they're going to come back to the land by the fishermen and by the hunters. "Behold, I will send for many fishermen, and they will fish them. And afterward, I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain, every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. For my eyes are on all their ways, and they are not hidden from my face, nor is their iniquity hidden from my eyes." According to God's prophet Jeremiah, the children of Israel will make Aliyah to the promised land from all nations, including America, via God's fishermen and Satan's hunters. Remember, God's end-of-the-age fishermen have been released since 1948, and they will continue to fish the Jewish people from America to Israel. From 1973 to 2016, an average of 2,500 Jewish people a year made Aliyah from America to the Promised Land. However, it is a substantially small amount compared to the 5.7 million that is living in America today, which confirms why God will allow Satan's hunters to invade America in all capacities. This is to say the children of Israel who reside in America have no reason to make Aliyah to Israel, which is surrounded by cataclysmic warfare. I mean, go look at today of the Middle East and North Africa if America is safe and prosperous. Therefore, has Satan's hunters initiated their prophetic calling in America? Has the U.S. government been infiltrated with Islamic fundamentalist groups and lobbyists, which has escalated anti-Semitism across the country? Has the Islamic doctrine infiltrated America's education system and universities? Is America witnessing the manifestation of anti-Semitic rhetoric, protests, incidents, and violence in the land of the free? Just look around today. Are we witnessing the beginning of the fulfillment of Jeremiah's prophecy in America right before our very eyes? To completely understand the prophetic calling of Satan's end-of-the-age hunters in America, let us first review how Islamic extremism has infiltrated the United States government, deceptively cunning its way to the highest office in the world, the presidency of the United States. Okay, so now let's talk about the Islamic infiltration in the U.S. government, and we'll begin with Saudi Arabia. And again, disclaimer for whoever might be joining us right now, if you are dogmatic about any president, this will offend you, okay? But we got to call it like it is. So just please understand, we're believers first, not Americans, okay? I love America. Of course I do. I'm an American. But we are believers first, and we've got to be honest with America and honest with Israel. We got to be honest with everything, okay? Because that's, of course, that's what it's about. So again, just take this for what it's worth, and you'll find something very disturbing. Okay, we'll first begin with Saudi Arabia, okay? And we've discussed Saudi Arabia in the past. Most people are familiar with Saudi Arabia, and we'll get a little bit more familiar with this harlot country as well. The ultimate conspirator of Islam's ideology and financial influence in America and frankly the world is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is the region of Ishmael and Esau, which is Satan's original and the end of the age hunters, okay? All this is going to kind of tie in together if you've been with us on part one. Saudi Arabia is a theocratic monarchy with a legal system based on the strictest form of Islamic Sharia law, where citizens can receive harsh punishments, including death, for apostasy and blasphemy. Make no mistake, Islam is the greatest false religion and abomination the world has ever known, and Saudi Arabia is the womb where its evil roots originated in the 7th century. In the next chapter, we will thoroughly discuss how Islam is the primary religion Satan has used and will use to directly defy and blaspheme the Holy Scriptures, and as it sadly deceives billions of people. Regrettably, Islam is the world's second largest religion, and it is the fastest growing one with over 1.8 billion followers, or 24% of the global population. Think about that. 25% of the global population is deceived by Islam. Interestingly enough, in 2017, Saudi Arabia was ranked as the most religious country in the world and 9th among the world's most powerful countries. Saudi Arabia is the home to Islam's 2 most holy cities, Mecca and Medina. Mecca exhibits the most sacred site in Islam, the blasphemous Kaaba shrine, where 15 million Muslims visit annually, which unfortunately makes it one of the most visited places on the face of the earth. Okay, if you're not familiar with Saudi Arabia, that's where Saudi Arabia is, southeast of Israel. And you can see where Medina is in kind of like the middle of the country, okay, on the western side. And then Mecca is below it, okay? And then above that, I show you where Ishmael and Esau, were situated with their land piece. Okay, that is the Kaaba shrine. If you've never seen that, that is in Mecca where they go around it, okay, kind of like in clockwise form, so to speak, or counterclockwise. I'm not sure which way. But that is the idolatrous Kaaba shrine. In our book, God's Prophetic Timeline, Messiah's Final Warning, we thoroughly explore Revelation 17 and 18, confirming Mecca, Saudi Arabia as Mystery Babylon or the Great Harlot. In these 2 prophetic chapters, John describes the Great Harlot who sits in a desert with whom the kings of the earth commit fornication, spiritual adultery, and its inhabitants are made drunk with the wine of her spiritual adultery. The prophet uses wine as symbolism for the one product in the world the kings of the earth and its inhabitants require every day for occupations and activities in our society, which is oil. John also uses fornication as symbolism because he is speaking of the most adulterous false religion in the history of the world, which certainly is Islam. In other words, John is prophesying about a specific city and kingdom which will leverage a product to deceive the kings and the inhabitants of the earth to spread its evil, blasphemous religion. Without any doubt, Saudi Arabia has leveraged its oil and also the abundance of its luxury to spread its harlot propaganda and tyranny of Islam, the mother of all abominations across the world. Unfortunately, the luxurious abundance and influential power of the harlot's oil has infiltrated the U.S. government, buying politicians' souls, including presidents, which has enabled its radical Sunni Islam doctrine to infiltrate America's borders in all major capacities. Accordingly, how did Saudi Arabia rise to power and leverage its oil with America, which has culminated with them buying major influence within the U.S. government and education systems to spread its harlot ideology? Okay. Before the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1923, it controlled most of the Arabian Peninsula, with the Arabians occupying the other areas of the region. After the Ottoman Empire collapsed, King Abdul Aziz gained power and control over the region, including its capital, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. In 1932, the region was named the Kingdom of Saud, and by the time of his death in 1953, it stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea and from Iraq to Yemen. Okay, so that is the Ottoman Empire before it fell, and you can see where it encompassed Saudi Arabia. And then after it fell, the Ottoman Empire, then you had the Kingdom of Saud formed in 1932. In the 1930s, as Saud obtained complete power and control over Saudi Arabia, the Saudis discovered massive oil reserves in their land, which would eventually change the geopolitical and religious landscape of the world. Subsequently, Aramco, an Arabian American oil company, was formed, and the great harlot began to spew its fundamentalist ideology and financial perversion all over the world, including America. Saudi Arabia would come to have the largest proved crude oil reserves and largest daily oil production in the world until 2011. As of recent years, Aramco's value has been estimated between $1.25 trillion and $10 trillion, making it the world's most valuable company. Although the Saudi government obtained complete control of Aramco in 1980 by acquiring a 100% stake in the company, America's soul had already been sold to the great harlot. As of this writing, the Saudis' perpetual adulterous influence in the U.S. government, federal agencies, and politicians, including presidents, has significantly increased since their total control over Aramco. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is the originator, manufacturer, and major financer and supporter of the world's most fundamentalist form of Sunni Islam called Wahhabism. During Saud's reign, he instituted Wahhabism, which was agreed upon by the dynastic alliance between his family and Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab, the father of Wahhabism. Wahhabism is the strictest form of Sunni Islam. It controls and neglects the basic human rights of society, including women, in the form of freedom of speech, expression, controlled prayer behavior, conformity of dress code, business and leisure activities, lifestyle choices, and many other God-given rights. The Saudi government forces excessive and extreme measures in establishing obedience to the strictest rules of Wahhabism, which include public beatings, executions, and imprisonment for breaking one of the least of its requirements. Saudi Arabia's human rights record is a clear indicator of its inhumane governing because, according to the International Human Rights Indicator, it poorly ranks 205 out of 216 countries. Nevertheless, the Wahhabi fundamentalist continues in Saudi Arabia, and to this day, as Al-Ash Sheikh, Saudi Arabia's leading religious family, are descendants of Wahhab. Okay. In fact, Salman bin Abdul Aziz, who is the current king of Saudi Arabia, proclaims Wahhabism is pure Islam. In the past few decades, it is estimated the great harlot was spent upward of to $100 billion of the petrodollars to spread Wahhabi Sunni Islam, between $2 billion and $3 billion per year since 1975, and at least $87 billion. Think about this, $87 billion from 1987 to 2007. Tens of billions of dollars were also spent in non-Islamic nations, 200 universities, 210 Islamic centers, 1,500 mosques, 4,000 preachers and missionaries, 2,000 schools for Muslim children, book materials, media, and subsidies to reward journalists and Islamic scholars. All of these petrodollars were spent in Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America for the widespread regard of Wahhabi Sunni Islam. The tens of billions of dollars in petro-Islam funded an estimated 90% of the expenses of the entire faith, which is staggering, and it includes funding terrorist organizations. During this time, Wahhabism procured a preeminent position of strength in the global expression of Islam, which is in its strictest form command Muslims to hate infidels for their religion, for Allah's sake. And it declares democracy is responsible for all of the horrible wars in the 20th century. Does this doctrine sound like a lovely and wonderful, peaceful religion that the U.S. government needs to be alliance with? Does Saudi Arabia's doctrine of Wahhabism align with our Judeo-Christian values that America was built upon? The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is not only the womb where Islam was birthed, but with its Wahhabi Sunni doctrine, it is also the predominant theological and ideological fountain and financer of Islamic terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, Al-Nusra Front, the Taliban, and others. These extremist groups, along with other terrorist nations, are guilty of the escalated and widespread violence that we have witnessed in the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe since 2003. Saudi Arabia finances and supports all of these terrorist groups, which makes it arguably the most prolific sponsor of Islamic terrorism across the globe, with the United States, by the way. Just as the Apostle John describes, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Therefore, when we witness or read about the martyr believers and Jews by Satan's hunters in the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, more than likely Saudi Arabia's petrodollars with America are funding or at least associated with these evil groups, perpetually fulfilling John's prophecy. As we have discovered, Saudi Arabia is the region of Ishmael and Esau, which as a region are generational enemies to the Jewish people. Former Florida Senator Bob Graham stated, Saudi Arabia has not stopped its interest in spreading extreme Wahhabism. ISIS is a product of Saudi ideals, Saudi money, and Saudi organizational support, although now they are making a pretense of being very anti-ISIS. Former CIA Director James Woosley describes Saudi Arabia as the soil in which Al-Qaeda and its sister organizations, terrorist organizations, are flourishing. In 2015, the Vice Chancellor of Germany, Sigmar Gabriel, accused Saudi Arabia of supporting religious extremism, proclaiming Wahhabi mosques are financed all over the world by Saudi Arabia. So now let's look at Saudi Arabian influence in the United States government. This should make all of us very sick at what's going on up in our government with the bowing down to Islam. I think we can all see that pretty clear. So we'll discover this. Since the American-Saudi partnership in Aramco was formed, it has perpetuated through the lineage of the U.S. presidents as the Saudi petrodollars and the abundance of its luxury has infiltrated the land of the free in all capacities of American society. Most certainly, as the Apostle Paul proclaimed, the love of money is the root of all evil. And this truth definitely describes Saudi Arabia and the U.S. government. Following is a list of Saudi influence over recent U.S. presidents. Okay, Jimmy Carter, he was basically a part of this. He's a big anti-Semite. Okay, he's very well known about that. Apartheid. He's written a book about it. So he's very against the Jewish people for sure. King Saud, the founding member of the Carter Center, donated tens of millions of dollars over the year to the Carter Center in Georgia. In 1993 alone, the late King Fahd gifted $7.6 million, while more recently, the king's nephew, Prince bin Talal, donated at least $5 million to the Carter Center. We'll go to the Bush family. This should be very well known. The Bush family and the Saud family are like peanut butter and jelly. Okay, they are together. That's very well known. You can read about that with your own research, including all of the allied companies and institutions. They have received $1.476 billion from Saudi Arabia. My friends, you tell me, does that buy influence or does that not buy influence? I believe it does buy influence, and we're going to read about it. Okay, but these presidents have bowed down to Islam, okay? And even the current ones today have bowed down to Islam. So we're going to go through those. And again, if it offends someone because they're loyal to any president, then please read these things and please discern how these presidents have bowed down and put our country in a bad position, every one of them, Republican and Democrat. Okay, now let's go to the Clintons. They've received 10 to 25 million in donations to the Clinton Foundation. Okay, for sure. And then when you go forward, and this is going to offend some people for sure, but Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Ivanka Trump, his daughter, received $2 billion from the Saudis. Now, it was legal and it was kosher, but still, do you think they would receive $2 billion if he wasn't the president? I don't think so. So again, we've got to be fair to everybody, okay? And if one is dogmatic and they love Trump or love Carter or love Bush or love this and they're all in, then they will be deceived, because you cannot be all in with these politicians. You got to discern the politicians, okay? We have to understand that. Okay. Would not Saudi Arabia expect a return on their investment from this enormous amount of money donated to these greedy presidents, obtaining favor with the borders of the land of the free? Would not the Saudis leverage their money to implement their evil agenda for America? The resounding answer is absolutely yes. I mean, that's just common business sense. Throughout the 20th century, the benefits of the partnership were basically one-sided, to say the least. The great harlot has sold oil to America at prices of its own discretion, and in exchange, the U.S. government foolishly provides them with military support and ignorantly turns a blind eye to their inhumane and abysmal religious atrocities. Saudi Arabian petrodollars and lobbyists have also endangered America's sovereignty, which ultimately will release Satan's hunters in America. The most effective Saudi lobbyist was Prince Bandor, Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the United States from 1983 to 2005, who was fundamentally influential for the great harlot. He effectively joined the Bush administration as a virtual member of the cabinet. The Economist reported no Arab ambassador, perhaps no ambassador at all, has come close to matching Prince Bandor's influence in the American capital. At the height of his powers, he was indispensable to both sides. In Mr. Ottaway's words, at once the king's exclusive messenger and the White House's errand boy. Okay, so he was the king of Saud's exclusive messenger, but he was also the White House's errand boy. This should be absolutely alarming for American citizens, for any foreign lobbyist to have this much influence and power in the U.S. government, much less a representative of a country who faithfully practices Wahhabism. Just in the first decade of the 21st century, the Saudis paid an estimated $100 million to American firms to lobby the U.S. government for the great harlot's agenda for America, which is to transform America into a Wahhabi-style Islamic state, quote unquote. What is even more disturbing about the drunkenness of the U.S. government is the Saudi lobbying mostly occurred after the 9/11 attacks, which is absolutely astonishing, insulting, and reckless, because 15 of the 19 hijackers of the 4 airliners on 9/11 originated from Saudi Arabia, not Iraq, not anywhere else, only Saudi Arabia. This is treason at its highest level, because 9/11 was an act of war, and it should have the American people protesting and demanding answers from the U.S. government, including the presidents who have sold America's soul to the great harlot. Since 2015, Saudi Arabia has paid $18 million. This is after 9/11. This is 14 years after 9/11. Saudi Arabia has paid $18 million to 145 registered lobbyists to influence the U.S. government for its propaganda and its agenda. Clearly, the U.S. government has cowardly bowed down to the almighty petrodollar, and the consequential aftermath will not be in favor of the children of Israel and, frankly, all believers in Messiah, because Satan's hunters will be released in America. What has been the overall result of the Saudis' oil, petrodollars, luxury, and lobbying in America? What has America received in return? Since 2001, which again was after the devastating 9/11 attacks, more than 900 mosques have been erected. 900 mosques has been erected after 9/11. Okay, 14 of the 19 were Saudis, and after 9/11, more than 900 mosques have been erected in America, which is an 80% increase from approximately 300 mosques before 2001. And the overwhelming majority were financed by Saudi Arabia. Again, this is extremely careless, irresponsible, and repulsive. The Great Harlot also finances the major of imams of the mosque in America, and the peaceful curriculum in these mosques is Wahhabi Sunni Islam. According to a report by Freedom House, a Washington-based non-governmental organization, Wahhabi influence over Islamic institutions in the U.S. was considerable by 2003, which was reported from a testimony before the U.S. Senate. To support this testimony, on July 25th, 2017, Imam Ammar Shahin of the Islamic Center of David in Northern California was caught on camera encouraging American Muslims to eliminate Jewish people, and he prayed for their death. The Wahhabi Sunni Islam teacher also led a prayer in response to the metal detectors being placed at the Temple Mount at the time, in response to a Muslim terrorist attack, declaring, "Liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the filth of the Jews." Okay, remember, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the mosque on the Temple Mount that they worship at. The Dome of the Rock, they don't worship, it's just a site. But this Al-Aqsa Mosque is the one that they do worship on the holiest piece of real estate. It is an abomination to the Lord for sure, because it's his land, not Islam's. And annihilate them to the very last one. Since 2004, Saudi Arabia has been designated as a country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998 for participating in severe violations of religious freedom. According to a report by Freedom House, the Saudi government and its affiliates published hundreds of publications filled with hatred and intolerance towards Christians, Jews, and other Americans, which was disseminated across the country by 2006. The report concluded the Saudi government propaganda examine reflects a totalitarian ideology of hatred that can incite to violence, and it is being mainstreamed within our borders through the efforts of a foreign government, namely Saudi Arabia, and it demands our urgent attention. By 2013, 75% of North American Islamic mosques and centers relied on Wahhabi preachers who promote anti-American ideas in person and online through sermons of Saudi-produced literature. According to U.S. intelligence officials, in September 2013, hundreds of millions of dollars were still flowing to Muslim terrorists from private donors in the Kingdom of Saud. In May 2016, it was reported the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had spent untold millions promoting Wahhabism, the radical form of Sunni Islam that inspired the 9/11 hijackers and that now inflames ISIS. Furthermore, Saudi's Prince bin Talal has invested 27 million petrodollars to support Palestinian suicide bombers. And ironically, he just happens to be the largest shareholder of News Corp, the parent company to Fox News. Everybody, how could the U.S. government allow such hate-filled, evil, and blasphemous ideology to infiltrate America's borders, especially after the 9/11 attacks? Why would they enable the Great Harlot to continue to expand their demonic bondage doctrine, including an 80% increase in mosques since 2001 across the land of the free? I mean, this is absolutely crazy. How could they allow an ancient enemy to the children of Israel, Saudi Arabia, who is located in Satan's original and end-of-the-age hunters, regions of Ishmael and Esau, to plant its evil roots deep into the four corners of America? As we have discovered, John provides the answer. The kings of the earth committed fornication, adultery, spiritual adultery with the harlot of Islam, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the oil of her false religion, while the harlot is drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Yeshua. Assuredly, the U.S. government's irresponsible, careless, and reckless behavior will only escalate and intensify the climatic and ultimate release of Satan's end-of-the-age hunters. Look at today, everybody, in America against the children of Israel, fulfilling Jeremiah's prophecy. All we have to do is look at it today, my friends. Look at Israel, look at Gaza, look at the protests, look at the support for the Palestinians across America. You know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in the Middle East. I mean, you're seeing all of this ramp up against the Jewish people, okay? I mean, we're seeing it right in front of our eyes, and the Israel-Gaza war has escalated another realm of this that we're seeing that we can identify as a warning sign of what's coming in the future. Okay, so now let's look at the Muslim Brotherhood, okay? We went through Saudi Arabia, and now let's look at the Muslim Brotherhood and how they have infiltrated into the Middle East. I'm sorry, into America. I apologize. Another Sunni Islamic fundamentalist organization that was astonishingly obtained significant status within the U.S. government is the Muslim Brotherhood. This political, religious, yet terrorist organization was founded by Hassan al-Banna in Egypt in 1928. Hassan al-Banna was extremely clear on the Brotherhood's ultimate goals for not only America, but for the whole world. He declared, "It is in the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations, and to extend its power to the entire planet." My friends, this one quote will tell you the nature of Islam. This is the truest form of Islam. This is why he said it, okay? And then look at it. It is in the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, but to dominate, to impose its law, Sharia law, on all nations, including America, and to extend its power to the entire planet. That is the nature of Islam. You're seeing the quote from the Muslim Brotherhood leader, the founder, so to speak, and that is the truest form of Islam. Please note the terrorist group Hamas is directly associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and its charter calls for the murder of Jews, the obliteration of Israel, and Israel's replacement with an Islamic theocracy. The Muslim Brotherhood unequivocally believes in the establishment of Sharia law based on the Quran and the Sunnah, which is the oral account of the teachings, deeds, and sayings of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. The terrorist organization believes the Quran and the Sunnah are the sole reference points for ordering the life of a Muslim family, individual, community, and state. The Muslim Brotherhood's motto and slogans include Islam is the solution, Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, Jihad is our way, dying in the way of God is our highest hope, God is greater. The Muslim Brotherhood's initial goal was to build a transnational organization, as groups were founded in Lebanon, Syria, and Transjordan, with its strategic headquarters for the whole Muslim world located in Cairo, Egypt. Other Brotherhood organizations were founded in Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Afghanistan, and Malaysia. As of 1994, an international agency of the terrorist organization assures the cooperation of the ensemble of its national organizations. To understand how the Muslim Brotherhood infiltrates governments with the sole intent and purpose of overthrowing them, let us review its history in Egypt, which eventually culminated with the Brotherhood's successful conquest of the Egyptian government. From 1936 to 1938, the Muslim Brotherhood grew from 800 members to 200,000, and by 1948, it had over 2 million members. After several years of revolting against the Egyptian government, assassinating the Egyptian prime minister, and being accused of several bombings and brutal killings, the Egyptian government banned the Muslim Brotherhood from Egypt. Shortly thereafter, on February 12, 1949, the Brotherhood's leader, Hassan al-Banna, was assassinated in what many concluded was retaliation of the assassination of Egypt's prime minister. In 1950s to 1960s, after the Muslim Brotherhood revolted again over Egypt's monarchy, the organization was banned. Thousands of its members were imprisoned. Many were tortured in holding camps, while others sought asylum in Saudi Arabia. It is worthy to note that for a half a century, Saudi Arabia financed the Muslim Brotherhood because the two shared similar doctrines and interests. In the 1970s, under new Egyptian President Anwar Sadat, the Muslim Brotherhood was welcomed back to Egypt. Members were released from Egyptian prisons, and its organization was overall tolerated. Subsequently, the Brotherhood launched it into Egyptian politics in order to overthrow the current government in favor of their fundamentalist theology. From 1981 to 2011, under Hosni Mubarak regime, the Muslim Brotherhood consistently called for Islamic reform and a democratic system in Egypt. During Mubarak's era, the Brotherhood was the largest opposition group, and it built a profound network of support and admiration through charities, social works, and social media. In the 2005 Egyptian parliamentary elections, the Muslim Brotherhood was victorious in its infiltration of the Egyptian government because it won 88 seats compared to 14 seats for the opposition. During the Brotherhood's term in parliament, there were grave concerns about its commitment to democracy, equal rights, and freedom of expression and belief, because these were the principles of organization politicked on. In October 2007, the Muslim Brotherhood released a detailed political platform. One of the two essential issues it called for was board of Muslim clerics to oversee the government, and the other was limiting the office of the presidency to Muslim men only. Additionally, a deputy leader of the organization declared it would seek dissolution of the 32-year peace treaty with Israel. After the Egyptian Revolution of 2011, which we discussed with the final explosion of the Middle East, which removed Mubarak from power, the Muslim Brotherhood was legalized in Egypt. In the 2011 parliamentary elections, the Brotherhood dominated by winning 235 out of 498 seats, far more than any other party. The Muslim Brotherhood finalized its infiltration of the Egyptian government by winning the 2012 presidential election with Mohamed Morsi. However, the terrorist organization's giant victory was short-lived due to its radical legislation, referendums, prosecution of journalists, pro-Muslim Brotherhood gang attacks, and persecution of Egypt's Coptic Christians. On July 3rd, 2013, in response to one of the largest protests in human history, the Egyptian military arrested and detained Morsi. In response to Morsi's arrest, Muslim Brotherhood supporters looted and burned police stations and dozens of churches as they escalated violence throughout Egypt, resulting in the death of over 600 people and the injury of 4,000. Consequently, the Egyptian military cracked down on the Muslim Brotherhood, which many called the worst in 8 decades, because most of its leaders were held in custody, including its supreme leader, Mohammed Badi. On September 23rd, 2013, an Egyptian court outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood and seized its assets. And on December 21st, Prime Minister Hazim al-Bilawi proclaimed the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. On March 24th, 2014, an Egyptian court sentenced 529 members of the Brotherhood to death. In the following months, an estimated 16,000 to 40,000 members and supporters were arrested by Egyptian police. In February 2015, an Egyptian court sentenced another 183 members of the Muslim Brotherhood to death. 73 and former President Mohamed Morsi was sentenced to death along with 120 others on May 16, 2015. Is this the kind of Islamic doctrine that the U.S. government needs to be infiltrated and associated with? The Muslim Brotherhood has approximately 80 chapters and organizations across the world, including the following countries: Bahrain, Iran, Turkey, Iraq, Israel, Gaza Strip, Jordan, Qatar, Kuwait, Lebanon, Syria, the UAE, Yemen, Algeria, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, Somalia, Sudan, Tunisia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Maldives, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. As of 2015, the Muslim Brotherhood has been labeled a terrorist organization by Egypt, Russia, Syria, the UAE, and ironically, the great harlot, Saudi Arabia. Although Saudi Arabia financed the Muslim Brotherhood for over half a century, the two extremists became estranged during the Gulf War and after the election of Mohammed Morsi in Egypt in 2012. Saudi Arabia opposed Iraq's invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein, but the Muslim Brotherhood supported it. The Brotherhood also took offense with Saudi Arabia because it allowed U.S. troops to be based in the Kingdom of Saud to fight Iraq during the Gulf War. The tensions escalated between the two during the Arab Spring because the Saudis' royal family was alarmed by the example set by the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt's revolution and elections with Mohammed Morsi. What compounded the matter was the Muslim Brotherhood acquired many supporters inside the Kingdom of Saud because the Saudis used many of the Brotherhood as teachers, and they methodically took control over Saudi Arabia's intellectual life. Consequently, the Muslim Brotherhood was labeled a threat to the royal family's control because its members became entrenched both in Saudi society and in Saudi state, taking a lead role in key governmental ministries. Stephanie Lacroix, an expert on Saudi affairs, declared this: "The education system is so controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, it will take 20 years to change, if at all." Now that we have explored the Muslim Brotherhood's infiltration and eventual collapse of the Egyptian government and the cataclysmic effects that resulted, let us explore the Brotherhood's infiltration and influence in the U.S. government. Since 1953, after the Muslim Brotherhood met with U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower in the Oval Office, the terrorist group has received a false reputation of credibility and tolerance in America. In 1963, the United States chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood was created through Muslim Students Association, the MSA. In the following decades, other front organizations were specifically created in America for the Muslim Brotherhood to infiltrate the U.S. government and the education system. Okay, and here is a list of those. The North America Islamic Trust, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, Islamic Society of North America, the American Muslim Council, and the Muslim American Society, and the Council of American Islamic Relations, which is CARE. Without any doubt, the Muslim Brotherhood wants to infiltrate the U.S. government and politically collapse America's current constitution and laws, thereby implementing Sharia law, which is Islam's evil doctrine. In 1988, an FBI informant inside the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood reported the Muslim Brotherhood was in the first of 6 phases to institute the Islamic Revolution in the United States. Very important to understand that. The overall objective is to peacefully get inside the United States government and also American universities and ultimately change the Constitution of America. Omar Ahmed, who is chairman of the board of CARE, a Muslim Brotherhood front organization, declared Islam isn't in America to be equal to any other faith, but to become dominant. Okay, the Quran should be the highest authority in America and Islam the only accepted religion on earth. Remember, my friends, this is what they believe. This is their charter. This is what Islam is. We can't go on that everything's cool and peaceful with Islam. No, they take no back seat to anybody. I mean, he's telling you right there, the quotes from the leaders of these organizations. Saudi Arabia is not going to come out and say that. They're on the national scene. They have to be more political correct, okay? But they're going to do it illegitimately, okay, in hindsight, in hiding, in lying, okay? We must understand that. They're just not going to come out and cut everybody's head off, okay? They can't do that in America. America has more guns in America than anywhere in the world, okay? So we must understand they're not going to do that. They're going to get politically involved, political jihad, and then you'll have to obey Sharia law or you get your head cut off, okay? So that's how it will work eventually if we do not wrap our heads around the dangers of what's going on in our country, specifically in Washington, D.C. The Brotherhood believes America is an apostate nation with infidels that does not champion moral and human values and cannot lead humanity. The Muslim Brotherhood calls for political and religious jihad against its enemies, Israel and America, because waging jihad against both of these infidels is a commandment of Allah that cannot be disregarded, quote unquote. In 1982, a document titled, now think about that, 1982 was 40 years ago, okay, over 40 years ago. A document titled The Muslim Brotherhood Project was discovered in Switzerland. In 2005, Scott Burgess translated it into English. It outlined in detail a global vision of a worldwide tragedy for Islamic policy. In 2007, during the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was a terror financing trial, a 1991 document written by Muhammad Akram Adulini, the explanatory memorandum, on the general strategic goal for the group in North America, was discovered in a 2004 FBI raid of a Virginia home and admitted as an exhibit. This document outlined in detail the strategy and intentions of the Muslim Brotherhood in America, which included eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within. This clearly explains to all Americans, including the intoxicated U.S. government, the Muslim Brotherhood's plans to infiltrate the political system and attempt to overthrow the American Constitution. In the U.S. Congress, there have been attempts to pass legislation to criminalize and label the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, but to no avail. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz and U.S. Representative Mario Diaz-Balart introduced the Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act of 2015, but unfortunately the bill did not pass. Interestingly enough, this bill was introduced after Egypt, Russia, Syria, UAE, and even Saudi Arabia designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. So why did not America designate them at that time, just like Russia, Egypt, Syria, UAE, and even Saudi Arabia? Why did America not label them as a terrorist organization? Why did the U.S. Congress, including former presidents George W. Bush and Barack Hussein Obama, not proclaim the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, especially after the governmental anarchy, chaos, and civilian unrest the Brotherhood instigated in Egypt, along with the detailed documents of the Brotherhood's intentions for America? Does the Muslim Brotherhood have influence in the U.S. Congress and the presidency of the United States? Claire Lopez, a former CIA officer, claims the Muslim Brotherhood achieved information dominance during the George W. Bush presidency, and it escalated in the Barack Hussein Obama administration. At the Gatestone Institute, she wrote, "The careful insuation of Muslim brotherhoods into positions from which they can exercise influence on U.S. policy began long before the attacks of 9/11, although their success has accelerated dramatically under the administration of President Barack Obama." Throughout former President Barack Obama's 8 years, many critics have wondered if he had any anti-American connections in the Islamic world, especially with a terrorist organization such as the Muslim Brotherhood. Regrettably, Obama's half-brother, Malik Obama, is directly linked to the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, which validates why the former president supported Mohamed Morsi's election in Egypt, who was Muslim Brotherhood. Malik Obama oversees the Muslim Brotherhood's international investments. And according to an Egyptian report, which cites the vice president of the Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt, okay, this is what he says: Malik Obama, President Obama's brother, is one of the architects of the major investments of the Muslim Brotherhood, quote unquote. Although a few of the mainstream media covered and announced this troubling connection with the Obamas before the former president was elected, most of the mainstream or lamestream media, politicians, and Americans foolishly disregarded these indicting connections and remained politically correct. This is why former President Obama was so adamant about defending and protecting Islam during his 8-year term. According to former Department of Homeland Security Officer Philip Haney, who worked under the Obama administration, he was ordered to eliminate all information that incriminated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Can you believe that? Haney stated, "I can't explain to you the ideology of the worldview of this Obama administration that makes them so adamant to protect Islam from harm by addressing it in its true nature." Haney believes if we don't find the wherewithal to address the nature of the threat we face realistically, courageously, and honestly, we're going to find ourselves confronted with a dragon who will become capable of devouring us if we are not careful. Please look around today. The Muslim Brotherhood's influence in the U.S. government's policies has been thoroughly documented in New York Times bestselling authors Aaron Klein and Brenda J. Elliott's book, Impeachable Offenses, The Case to Remove Barack Obama from Office. It documents that Obama assisted Islamic extremist groups rise to power in the Middle East, including the Muslim Brotherhood, because its members were allowed to serve on important American anti-terrorism security advisory boards. I mean, let's think about this. So we've got terrorist organizations serving on the anti-terrorism of America. I mean, give me a break. I mean, please understand these presidents are evil, okay? And he is as well. Barack Obama, George Bush, all of them, okay? They're evil people. They have sold our country out, okay? And unfortunately, the American people get so polarized by Obama, so polarized by Trump, so polarized by these American presidents that people can't discern right from wrong because they're so into a politician. And if you're so into a politician, you're already deceived, okay? Me, you, and anyone else, okay? We cannot be so into any politician because these people have sold our country down the river, including all of the ones that we've mentioned. Okay? In fact, Muhammad, and I can't pronounce his last name, an Egyptian-born Muslim Brotherhood operative and former senior advisor to Obama, unbelievably served 5 years on the former president's Homeland Security Advisory Council. I mean, think about that. I mean, that is just asinine. The book also substantiates the Obama administration could have leaked out and exposed national security and classified information through Hillary Clinton's deputy chief of staff, Huma Abedin, who was a personal and family associations to the Muslim Brotherhood and Saudi Arabia. As of March 29, 2017, Judicial Watch released 1,184 pages of State Department records, including previously unreleased Hillary Clinton email exchanges, revealing additional instances of Abedin and Clinton sending classified information through unsecured email accounts and contributors being given special access to the former Secretary of State. Abedin was on the executive board of the Muslim Student Association, which is a front group of the Muslim Brotherhood. In the Holy Land Foundation trial in 2007, there was an additional document introduced that confirmed the Muslim Brotherhood's association with the MSA, and it also authenticates its overall goal for the land of the free. It states, quote unquote, Muslim Brotherhood members must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and by the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. My friends, this is a political jihad, a spiritual jihad, and it will eventually be a physical jihad. From 1995 through 2008, Abedin worked at the Journal of Muslim Minority Affairs, which is a Sharia law journal whose editor-in-chief was her own mother, Saleha. Additionally, her mother sits on the Presidency Staff Council of the International Islamic Council for Dawah and Relief, an organization chaired by the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. Abedin's father was a professor in Saudi Arabia who founded the Institute for Muslim Minority Affairs, which Saudi Arabia supported along with the Muslim World League. According to former prosecutor Andrew McCarthy, the Muslim World League is perhaps the most significant Muslim Brotherhood organization in the world. A Saudi government document inspired by Huma Abedin's father explains the concept and goal of Muslim minority affairs is to establish global Sharia in our modern times. Please do not forget, this is the person who was Hillary Clinton's confidant for several years, which is very disturbing to say the least. Can you believe these people were working on behalf of the American people for several years? It is time for the American people to wake up from its delusional sleep and tranquility. Without any doubt, America's soul has been sold to the Islamic agenda of Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood by greedy, corrupt presidents and politicians, and they have defiantly infiltrated the U.S. government with their demonic, fundamentalist Wahhabi doctrine. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, who worked under the Obama administration, emphatically proclaims, "We've got Muslim Brotherhood in the U.S. government today, at least 10 or 15 of them in the U.S. government," quote unquote. The Islamic infiltration of the U.S. government will only enable Satan's hunters to be released in America, ultimately provoking the Jewish people to make Aliyah to the promised land. Okay, so now let's look at the Islamic infiltration of America's education system. Another troubling sign of the Islamic invasion of America is in the education system, including universities, colleges, and schools. As previously discussed, the Muslim Brotherhood has front organizations for the specific and sole purpose of infiltrating not only the U.S. government, but also the education system from top to bottom. The MSA was the first Muslim Brotherhood entity formed in America, and it has chapters at nearly every major college and university campus. The MSA is a point of recruitment for the Muslim Brotherhood, and it promotes a Sharia-based agenda, which is dedicated to spreading fundamentalist Islam among American youth. This is to say the MSA is in alliance with the global Islamic movement. The MSA aggressively promotes anti-Semitic operations on many campuses, such as the anti-Zionist Israel Apartheid Week. MSA has several offshoots, including the IMA, the MAYA, the ICNA, and the ISNA. Okay, so now before we go through those, just take a look around at our universities right now with what's going on with Israel and Gaza. Look at the universities, not all of them, but look at some of the ones that are just pro-Palestinian. It comes from this. It comes from what we're speaking of right now. Our colleges and our education system, especially the universities, are totally a disgrace. What's going on with the education system of the colleges, for sure. Okay, so we'll first go through the International Institute of Islamic Thought is another Muslim Brotherhood front organization that has dangerously infiltrated the education system in America. Their objective is to infiltrate not only the U.S. government, but also American universities. The IIT is the same organization that Mohammed Morsi, remember, he was elected president of Egypt, okay, the Muslim Brotherhood, he welcomed to reform the education system during his short rule over Egypt. Unfortunately, the IIT has donated massive amounts of money to several universities and colleges to establish its radical Islamic education or Sharia-based doctrine to America's young adults, perpetuating the ultimate Islamic takeover of America. The universities and colleges include, but are not limited to, George Mason University, Nazareth College, and I list all the universities who are for sure underneath this doctrine, okay? And as you can read. In 1988, a source for the FBI reported, in phase one of the Islamic Revolution, as followed by the Muslim Brotherhood, the IIT leadership has indicated that in this phase, their organization needs to peacefully get inside the U.S. government and also American universities. Again, it's going to be peace. They're going to come in peace, and then they're going to turn on you. Okay, kind of like the Antichrist comes in peace, and then he's going to have the jihad. Okay, it's the same thing. That's how Islam works. It's very deceptive. Most certainly in the past few decades, the Muslim Brotherhood under their front organizations have achieved their goal, which is to infiltrate all capacities of American society and proceed with the Islamic invasion of America. Saudi Arabia has also pumped their petrodollars into colleges and universities to appoint radical Islamic professors and teachers in departments of history, political science, Middle East studies, and so on. Basically, these professors connive and brainwash American students with an anti-American and anti-Zionist point of view. They deceivingly convince the young adults that America, its people, and its foreign policy are the global problem, and that America's wealth, lifestyle, and success are oppressing all of the other countries in the world. In recent years, American public schools have been indoctrinated with Islam as well. Research and studies have reported more than 500 historical errors in the public school textbooks on Islam, clearly showing a biased and favorable view of Islamic doctrine. Clearly, the U.S. government, which is infiltrated by Islamic extremists and their petrodollars, is to blame for this atrocity because of its legislative influence and implementation of Common Core, a national curriculum by George W. Bush. Consequently, America's youth are being deceived and they are in danger of being indoctrinated into following or defending Islam's radical teachings and practices. You're seeing it all over right now. Just please look around. The Islamic indoctrination has reached such insanity that a school in California and in other states taught its students a course that essentially requires them to become Muslims for 3 weeks. I mean, can you believe this? The schools asked them to dress as Muslims, change their names to Muslim names, memorize verses from the Quran, and make Islamic faith declarations such as Allah is the one true God, quote unquote. Certainly, all of their madness in the public school system has ensued because of the U.S. government's bowing down to radical Islam groups such as CARE and the American Muslim Council, and have direct connections to terrorist organizations associated with Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, American Muslim Council representative is serving a 23-year prison sentence for being a top fundraiser for Al-Qaeda in America. Furthermore, there are more than 225 Muslim schools in the United States that indoctrinate an estimated 50,000 children with Islamic education. Again, the overall financer of these schools is Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood, which certainly will be teaching and grooming these children in strict Wahhabi Sunni Islam. Bridget Gabriel, founder of ACT for America and the American Congress of Truth, summarizes the Islamic indoctrination of children very well by proclaiming they foster an environment of hate, loathing, and resentment towards Western culture, Christians, Jews, Shiites, secular Muslims, and non-Muslims. So now let's look at the anti-Semitism on the university campuses. As the petrodollars perpetually pumped anti-Semitic doctrine into America's colleges and universities, it has resulted in a significant rise in anti-Semitism. The ADL released data that reports in 2015, anti-Semitic attacks significantly rose by 3%, with a 50% increase in violent assaults than in the previous year. On college campuses, it nearly doubled in 2015 compared to 2014, the year of the blood moons. In 2014, a study by Trinity College found over half of Jewish college students have experienced anti-Semitism on their campuses. In 2016, the AMCHA Initiative, an organization that fights anti-Semitism on college campuses, reported the number of incidents involving the suppression of Jewish students, freedom of speech, and assembly doubled from 2015. The AMCHA study reported campuses that have an active Students for Justice in Palestine chapter are 7 times more likely to have incidents targeting Jewish students because of the indoctrination. Anti-Semitism in America. America has not only seen a rise in anti-Semitism at its colleges and universities, but it also has become widespread in all aspects of society. There are clear and disturbing statistics, and trends of anti-Semitism that are occurring in the land, of the free. In 2014, according to the ADL, the total number of incidents increased by 21% from 2013. There were 912 anti-Semitic events throughout America in 2014, which was the first time in a decade the overall number significantly rose. Abraham Foxman, the ADL National Director, said, and this is the blood moons, remember 2014, 2015. 2014 was a particularly violent year for Jews, both overseas and in the United States. Barry Curtis-Lusha, the ADL National Chairman, stated the reported increase in U.S. anti-Semitic incidents coincided with a huge upsurge in anti-Semitic attacks in Europe and everywhere else around the globe. The states with the highest number of anti-Semitic attacks were the ones with the largest Jewish populations. I mean, my friends, we've got to understand, it all relates. Of course, that's where the most Jewish populations, the most anti-Semitism. That's the way it's going to work in Europe. It's going to work in America. And we're seeing that. And it's no coincidence that the ones with the largest Jewish populations, New York, California, New Jersey, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, were the ones with the biggest anti-Semitic beliefs. In 2015, according to the ADL, the number of violent anti-Semitic assaults in America rose 3% from 2014. The ADL's annual audit recorded a total number of 944 incidents in America compared to 912 incidents in 2014. On university and college campuses, a total of 90 incidents were reported on 60 campuses, nearly doubling the 47 incidents reported on 43 campuses in 2014. ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt stated, "We are disturbed that violent anti-Semitic incidents are rising, and we know that for every incident reported, there's likely another that goes unreported. The trend towards anti-Semitic violence is very concerning." In 2015, the ADL also reported a great outburst of hate through online social media platforms. Greenblatt declared, "Online hate is particularly disturbing because of the ambiguity of social media and its deep penetration into our daily lives, plus the anonymity offered by certain platforms which facilitates this phenomenon. This issue has grown exponentially in recent years because of the internet provides racists and bigots with an outlet to reach a potential audience of millions," quote unquote. In 2015, the states with the largest Jewish population were once again those with the highest anti-Semitic incidents: New York, California, New Jersey, Florida, and Massachusetts. In 2016, according to the ADL, anti-Semitic incidents in America rose 34%, exploding by the numbers of 2015. There were 1,266 reported acts targeting Jewish people and institutions. Greenblatt stated, "There's been a significant sustained increase in anti-Semitic activity since the start of 2016. And what's most concerning is the fact that the number has accelerated over the past 5 months. Clearly, we have work to do and need to bring more urgency to the fight." In the first quarter of 2017, a wave of bomb threats hit 29 Jewish centers in America, with evacuations occurring in Phoenix, Palo Alto, San Diego, Long Beach, Seattle, North Carolina, Michigan, Rhode Island, Florida, Pennsylvania, Indiana, New York, New Jersey, Alabama, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. In general, in the first quarter of 2017, anti-Semitic incidents jumped 86%. You're just seeing it explode. From 2014 on forward, you're seeing it explode, ladies and gents, with the blood moons, with 541 reported incidents, which was on pace for more than 2,000 incidents in the year. Anti-Semitic incidents at non-denominational elementary, middle, and high schools increased by 106%, from 114 in 2015 to 235 in 2016. This increase accelerated in the first quarter of 2017 when 95 incidents were reported. Greenblatt stated, "Schools are a microcosm of the entire country. Children absorb messages from their parents and the media and bring them into their schools and their playgrounds. We are very concerned the next generation is internalizing messages of intolerance and bigotry. We can have total confidence the Islamic infiltration of their wicked agenda in public schools have also been a major factor in these troubling statistics. Once again, the states with the most incidents in 2016, 2017 continues among the states with the largest Jewish populations. That should be common sense of how that works. California, New York, New Jersey, Florida, and Massachusetts." So now let's check out America's open borders, the southern border, which is basically very open right now for anybody to come in. Over the last 50, 60 years, it's been a pandemic. In the past several years, especially this past U.S. presidential election year, remember, I wrote this in 2018 area, okay? So think about 2016 election, okay? In the past several years, especially this past U.S. presidential election, America's southern border with Mexico has hit a fever pitch levels among political, social, and religious realms. I think we can all remember when Donald Trump made all the comments about the border when he was running for office. That's what I'm talking about, that election, not the one where the election fraud and all these things that people say that's going on with Biden. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one between he and Hillary Clinton. Okay, Let's see. In the past several years, especially this past U.S. presidential election of 2016, America's southern border with Mexico has hit a fever pitch levels among political, social, and religious realms. Republicans and Democrats, who both have had tremendous opportunities to protect our borders from the entry of terrorists, have failed. Although elected President Donald J. Trump has boldly and sternly pledged to build an I can't even say the word, not penetrated, basically, I can't even say the word, wall and crack down on Islamic terrorism, it could be too late because the negligence of open border policy for several decades has allowed Satan's hunters to enter America. In 2006, a House Committee on Homeland Security reported that each year, hundreds of illegal aliens from countries known to harbor terrorists or promote terrorism are found trying to cross the border along the Rio Grande Valley. The report acknowledged that members of Hezbollah have already entered the United States across the border prior to 2005. In 2012, a report from the House Committee on Homeland Security showed 1,918 special interest aliens were stopped at the border from fiscal years 2006 to 2011. By the way, special interest aliens is code for terrorists or Satan's hunters. Once again, this clearly points to the recklessness and stupidity of the U.S. government's policies, which have been allowed by Republicans, Democrats, and presidents from both parties. On March 23, 2016, at a House Oversight Committee National Security Subcommittee hearing, U.S. Representative Ron DeSantis, who is the current governor of Florida, declared, "Recent reports state that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has apprehended several members of known Islamic terrorist organizations crossing the southern border in recent years." The Houston Chronicle validates DeSantis's statement from a report it had inappropriately obtained from the State Department of Public Safety, who distributed it to Texas elected officials, which acknowledged that border security agents have apprehended several Somalia terrorists who are known members of Al-Shabaab, an Islamic extremist group that was once funded by Osama bin Laden. Other special interest aliens or terrorists who have been arrested while attempting to cross the porous southern border and who have known connections to terrorist group include Afghans, Iranians, Iraqis, Syrians, Libyans, and Pakistanis. It is reported that immigrants who have been arrested over the past few years have terrorist associations, and they originate from 35 countries in the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia. From November 2013 to July 2014, authorities reported 143 land border crossing encounters with watch list individuals from these countries in southwest border states. What is even more disgraceful is the Department of Homeland Security's terrorist hands-off list, which was revealed when Senator Charles Grassley released internal DHS emails in 2014. The emails included a 2012 communication between the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection about whether officials would give a visa to a person who is believed to be a Muslim Brotherhood member and associated with Hamas and Hezbollah. Why would a terrorist be hands-off? Positively, the Islamic infiltration of the U.S. government impacted this ridiculous and insane list because of our corrupt, bought-off politicians, including presidents in Washington, D.C. To put this in perspective, in 2017, the GOP Congress killed a legislation bill banning taxpayer funding of Hamas, a sworn enemy of America and Israel. Therefore, if our greedy and ignorant politicians killed a bill to stop the funding of a terror group with our tax dollars, what do you think will stop them from entering our country? Okay, Muslim refugee immigration in the United States. America has been one of the most compassionate and accepting nations in the world, if not the most, when it comes to foreign immigration. After all, the land of the free was built upon immigrants from all lands of the world. It is the very fabric that makes America such a great phenomenon because of its acceptance of all people from all ethnicities, religions, and backgrounds. Without any doubt, the majority of people who immigrate to America have fallen in love with its ideas, liberty, freedom, and prosperity. Most immigrants treasure the opportunity to assimilate into the American dream, including its society, and contribute to the greatness of it. However, just as we have discovered, Islam and the extremists who defiantly support and advocate its dominance of the world directly defies the liberties and freedoms that America was built upon by its founding fathers. As previously mentioned, Islam's ultimate goal is complete global domination. That includes domination of America, culminating with the eradication of its constitution and laws in favor of Islamic Sharia law. Please note, I love the diversity of America with its neighborhoods such as Chinatown, Little Havana, Little Italy, so forth and so on, but I'm definitely opposed to any culture or religion that wants to completely eradicate what America was built upon, which is Judeo-Christian values that protect and support the Constitution of freedom of speech, religion, and liberty. Make no mistake, Islam will never, again, never coexist with these God-given principles. In 1992, according to the Pew Research Center, 41% of green card holders arrived from the Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Asian Pacific region, where fundamentalist Islam dominates. Think about that, 41% in 1992. Since 1992, an estimated 2 million Muslims have immigrated to the United States. On the contrary, before 1990, fewer than 5% of foreigners who took up residence in the United States came from Muslim countries. So think about that. In the 90s, it all shifted for America. In 2002, the percentage increased to 53% for these regions. Over that same period, the number of Muslim immigrants coming to America annually has doubled, from an estimated 50,000 to 100,000 each year. Of course, there is not an official estimate of Muslims in America because the Census Bureau does not track religious affiliation. Nevertheless, Pew estimates there were 2.75 million Muslims living in America in 2011, with only 1.7 of them holding legal permanent residency status. On the contrary, CARE states that there are approximately 7 million Muslims in America. In the past decade, under former President Barack Obama's administration, immigration for Muslim immigrants from terrorist countries escalated at an alarming pace. The Investors Business Daily reported that between 2010 and 2013, the Obama administration imported approximately 300,000 new immigrants from Muslim nations known for Islamic fundamentalists, more than from Central America and Mexico combined in the same period. Many of the 41,094 immigrants were from terrorist hotspots like Iraq, where ISIS operates. House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mike McCaul proclaimed that Obama's new policy is a federal sanctioned welcome party to potential terrorists. The IBD also reported that ISIS claimed to have released a huge wave of hunters from Libya across the Mediterranean Sea, disguised as refugees, to enter and cause destruction in Europe. We can have confidence that ISIS and other terrorist groups have taken advantage of America's stupid open border policies, as well as other lackadaisical, political correct immigration policies, and they have cleverly but legally entered America to promote their agenda. In fact, it is reported that America authorities are not able to estimate the number of homegrown terrorist jihadists, much less the infiltration of the refugee immigration. In Pew's report, The Future of the Global Muslim Population, Projections for 2010 to 2030, it projects that if the current trend continues, the Muslim population in America will vastly increase in the next 20 years, from 2.6 to 6.2 million in 2030. This massive wave of Muslim immigrants has resulted in some of America's towns and cities being basically formed under Islam, which means city governments and councils are being overtaken by Muslim leadership. This will only lead to drastic changes within the cities in order to be in compliance with the Quran and Sharia law. Okay, so now let's look at the examples of the Islamic invasion of America. In Islam, the term hijra, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correct, is used when Muslims migrate to populate non-Muslim nations to impose Sharia law in the name of Allah. Without question, America is witnessing the beginning of this in the land of the free. Let us explore how the Islamic Hijra has affected some cities and towns in America. Dearborn, Michigan, who has an estimated 100,000 people, and 40% of them are Muslims. In 2013, a leaked government document revealed that more Muslims living in Dearborn were on the federal terror watch list than from any other city except New York, and several of them have been arrested after attempting to leave America to join terrorist organizations. Even more troubling, author Steve Turini declared that he has witnessed no-go zones where Dearborn police cannot enter while riding with a member of the Detroit Metro SWAT police. He also states that in certain areas of Dearborn, Michigan, street signs suddenly go from English to Arabic. One could conclude that Dearborn is being transformed into operating as an Islamic Sharia city. Another example of the Islamic invasion of U.S. towns and cities is Hamtramck, Michigan, which became the first jurisdiction in the nation to elect a majority Muslim council in 2013. In the past decade, the Muslim population exploded with the arrival of thousands of Muslim immigrants, and in 2004, the town's culture shifted because the city council gave permission to a downtown Islamic center to broadcast its call to prayer from the speakers atop its roof. Okay, Hamtramck is approximately 23% Muslim, and unless there's a change in politics, it will continue to be transformed into an Islamic city within America. Since the outbreak of the Syrian civil war in 2011, over 2,100 Syrian refugees have entered Michigan, and the results will continue to dangerously manifest as they have in Hamtramck and Dearborn, Michigan. The Islamic invasion has also reshaped Minneapolis, Minnesota. U.S. Representative Michelle Bachmann, who has been one of the few outspoken political leaders against Islam, proclaimed, "Minnesota is no longer the state I moved to in the mid-1960s. Then we were all well-ordered society with a high-functioning population. Today, Minnesota has the largest Somalia community in America with a population of approximately 40,000. As a whole, the Somali refugees have not assimilated into American society, which has led to the denigration of the culture of Minnesota and of a large number of social problems, including terrorism." Bachmann declared, "Parallel societies kill assimilation from the third world and create havoc in American societies." Continuing, "This is a failed multicultural experience that is killing people and destroying the future of the West." She is referring to the following events: a recent shooting of a man by a Somalia refugee cop, Muslims being found with a bomb-making devices, Somalia women clothed from head to toe with Muslim clothing, the Sharia mindset of female genital mutilation, domestic abuse of women, Sharia-controlled zones, the refusal to assimilate into American culture and ways, and Islamic terrorism in the state. Representative Bachmann sums up the refugee immigration process best, declaring, "Immigrants must know it is a condition of entry to the U.S. to assimilate into Western society by adopting allegiance to Western law, not Sharia law. Immigrants should also be required to adopt Western dress and be informed they must abandon the illegal aspects of following Sharia law." In a small southern town in Tennessee, the Islamic invasion has also resulted in devastating results, as Muslim refugees refuse to assimilate into it. Residents of Shelbyville, Tennessee, have witnessed firsthand the culture clash of the Islamic refugees and American values. According to a local reporter for the Shelbyville Times-Gazette, the Somalis are very, very rude, inconsiderate, and very demanding. They would go into a store and haggle over prices. They would also demand to see a male salesperson and not deal with a woman in their stores. Their culture is totally alien to anything the residents are used to. Regrettably, the culture clash has also led to a series of violent crimes by the Somali migrants. On September 27 through 29, 2016, 3 churches were shot up by Muslims with AK-47s. Jihad Watch, the only media to report the heinous crime, reported a Muslim shoots up 3 churches and nothing is said about his motive or his Islamic identity. Would the same courtesy be shown a Christian who shot up 3 mosques? Why the cover-up? Who is responsible for it? What compounds the Islamic refugee crisis in Tennessee is that Nashville is preparing to become the most liberal sanctuary city in the United States. Okay, I wrote this in 2018, okay? 2 ordinances filed by Metro Councilman Bob Mendez and Colby Sledge, drafted with the assistance of the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition and cheered on by Mayor Megan Barry, will make Davidson County and Metro Nashville, Tennessee, the most liberal sanctuary for refugees. In fact, even more liberal in its policies than New York City or San Francisco. Think about that. Wow. The citizens of Nashville should demand that these incompetent liberal politicians kill this legislation, because Metro Nashville and its surrounding counties will only continue to witness an increase in violence and crime. The last example we will discuss of the Islamic invasion of America's cities and towns is in Utica, New York. In a piece titled "My Hometown is Gone," Loretta Proel, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, a former citizen of Utica and a blogger, conveyed her experience of living in an Islamic area where there's 25% or more refugee, mainly Muslim population. She witnessed 2 major changes. Churches have been turned into mosques and Muslim immigrants placed into local positions of bureaucratic power, which replaces Americans with Islamic refugees. Think about that. Wow. Who are these refugees and who is their alliance to? Before Loretta moved to North Carolina, she went to meetings in upstate New York and was told that Utica was full of ISIS and the local police were really worried. These are just a few of many examples of how American towns and cities are being infiltrated by Muslim refugees who refuse to assimilate to American values and culture. Instead, they would like to implement Islamic Sharia law. In the words of President Teddy Roosevelt, the American people must demand for migrants to assimilate because there is no room for them to be American and something else. Very good. The American people must demand for migrants to assimilate because there is no room for them to be American and something else. Without question, the U.S. refugee program for Muslims has failed, as towns, cities, churches, and ultimately people are being tremendously affected by the Islamic invasion of America. This invasion has been stained by hundreds of brutal attacks across the nation, on which I suppose one could write a whole series of books. The U.S. government's reckless and ignorant refugee policies and its bowing down to Islam will ultimately release Satan's hunters into America. Pamela Geller, the president of the American Freedom Defense Initiative, warns legislators are bent on keeping America on a path that will only bring civil strife and bloodshed on a massive scale and sooner than anyone expects. I completely concur with Geller's analysis because of what the prophet Jeremiah prophesied more than 2,500 years ago about Satan's hunters. So now let's look at the terrorist attacks that occurred after the 2014-15 area in America as we bring this chapter to a close. With Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood's infiltration of the U.S. government and the education systems, combined with decades-long Muslim migration in America, including open borders, we need to ask ourselves, have Satan's end-of-the-age hunters been released in the land of the free? Are we witnessing the devastating effects of the Islamic infiltration of the United States government and the greedy, politically correct politicians and media? Does America have active terrorist cells training inside its borders? Throughout the past decades, and especially since the horrific attacks of 9/11, there have been numerous major terrorist attacks on American soil from Islamic extremists, including Fort Hood and the Boston Marathon attacks. Since the Blood Moon Tetrad of 2014 and 2015, which was the sign and marker for the release of Satan's end-of-the-age hunters, these extremists have caused terror inside the borders of America. Following is a list of the major terrorist attacks since the Blood Moon marker of 2014 and 2015. Chattanooga, Tennessee, July 16, 2015, a Kuwaiti Muslim immigrant opened fire on 2 military facilities, a U.S. Naval Reserve Center, and a military recruiting office, killing 5 U.S. service members. In San Bernardino, California, December 2nd, 2015, a Muslim couple who had pledged allegiance to ISIS killed 14 people, seriously injuring 22 others. Until recently, it was the deadliest mass shooting in the United States since the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting, and the deadliest terrorist attack to occur in the United States since 9/11. Orlando, Florida, in 2012-2016, a Muslim man who called 9/11 and proclaimed allegiance to ISIS killed 49 people, wounding 58 others in a nightclub. At the time, it was the deadliest mass shooting in United States history, okay, and the deadliest terrorist attack on American soil since 9/11. You're seeing all these records being broken, my friend. 2015 was the largest, now 2016 is the largest, and now look at 2017. Las Vegas, Nevada, October 1st, 2017, is the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history, as 58 people were killed and 546 injured. There's a major controversy in several conspiracy theories surrounding this horrendous event, because the investigation and statements of the federal and local authorities have major faults, to say the least. In my personal opinion, this was an Islamic terrorist attack. How could this be? Let us follow the money. We always say that. Follow the money and you will get your answer to anything in life. Follow the money. The CEO of Mandalay Bay, James Marin, has donated millions to organizations tied to Islamic terrorism, including CARE. So if you're ever in Las Vegas, don't go to the Mandalay Bay, okay? Don't go there, because he's donated millions to organizations tied to Islamic terrorism, including CARE. The U.S. Justice Department has labeled CARE an unindicted conspirator to Muslim terrorism, okay? They're a terrorist organization, CARE is. Even liberal Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer said CARE has ties to terrorism and intimate links with Hamas. Additionally, and quite revealing, Marin sold off most of his, check this out now, this is very interesting. This is where you have to follow the money. Marin sold off most of his company shares, $13.7 million worth of his company stock, prior to the Las Vegas shooting, which occurred at the Mandalay Bay. Coincidence? Of course not, but rather indicting. Even more astonishing and troubling, Marin is a sitting member of the Homeland Security National Infrastructure Advisory Council, which raises major flags. So let's get this straight. The CEO of Mandalay Bay, the site of the deadliest mass shooting in history, U.S. history, is a sitting member of the Homeland Security National Infrastructure Advisory Council, and has donated millions to Islamist terrorist groups. So you tell me. I think we can all connect the dots. Okay, let's go to New York City. New York, October 31st, 2017. A Muslim man drove a flatbed pickup truck and rammed into runners and cyclists on a bike path in Lower Manhattan, New York City, killing 8 people and injuring at least 11 others. Combined with Europe, this was the 15th vehicular ramming attack by Islamic jihadists since 2015. That's what they were doing then. They were using vehicles to just run over people, just to crash into a group of people back in those days. In total, these attacks have killed 142 people, in which seems like the Islamist new method, the vehicle ramming, of causing terror. Okay, here's a map that is in the book series. Following is a map of jihad training camps in America. This information was provided by Stephen Emerson of American Jihad and Independent Investigators. So there you can look, my friends, of the research that he has done, and I have no reason not to believe him. So everybody can look at that real quick, and that's where people believe that there are Islamic terrorist networks in the land, in these states. The Great American Eclipse. Before we conclude, let us discuss a fascinating celestial occurrence that happened in America. On August 21st, 2017, the Great American Eclipse, a total solar eclipse, transpired only over the United States in totality. In Chapter 5, we discuss the unique phenomenon of another one of God's celestial bodies, the moon, the blood moons, and how they directly correlate as signs and markers to the children of Israel. The occurrence of a solar eclipse signifies his warning to the nations, or in this case, America, because the total eclipse only occurred over the land of the free in totality. Remember, the blood moons indicates God's warning to Israel because its calendar months are based on the moon. On the contrary, the occurrence of a solar eclipse signifies his warnings to the nations, or the nation over which the solar eclipse beckons, as its calendar months are only based on the sun. Also, the rabbinical thinking is, as the sun is larger than the moon, so are the nations in size compared to Israel. What many believers did not realize is the Great American Eclipse coincided at a very specific and humble time on God's calendar, which is the Hebrew calendar. The total eclipse befell on the beginning of the month of Elul, the month of repentance. This month holds supreme significance in biblical history because it is the exact time Moses ascended Mount Sinai to make atonement for the children of Israel's sin of the golden calf. It is also the precise time that Satan began to tempt Messiah in the wilderness for 40 days. Therefore, instead of America celebrating the Great American Eclipse as a good omen, it should be humbly praying and repenting to the Lord God for its sins. Because the total solar eclipse is a sign of forthcoming judgment, including the release of Satan's hunters. Without question, America has turned from its first love and what it was built upon, which is the Lord God and his word, the Holy Bible. America has deeply fallen into great apostasy in the past several decades, including but not limited to aborting more than 60 million little lambs, leading in the exploitation of pornography, removing prayer from our schools and the 10 commandments from our courthouses, removing God out of our government and our personal lives, approving same-sex marriage, abusing drugs and alcohol, and so forth and so on, including replacement theology in the church. All in all, America has called evil good and good evil. Why would the Almighty keep his hand of protection upon America while it keeps abominating and blaspheming his law and commandments? Did he not destroy Israel, his promised land, twice for the same adulterous and wicked ways? Believe me, if the Lord God destroyed his heritage, his covenanted land, twice for their disobedience and their stiff-necked ways, we can be sure that he will allow war and terrorism to come upon the shores of America. Okay, the aftermath of the Great American Eclipse. Since the sign or marker of the Great American Eclipse, America has witnessed and endured major cataclysmic events that, if calculated, would be astronomical and coincide in nature. In other words, it is not by coincidence these major tragic events have occurred since the total eclipse over America. Following is a list of just a few of the major events. Keep in mind the total eclipse occurred on August 21st, and within the first 3 months after August 21st, these major events occurred on American soil. We had 3 major hurricanes, if you remember back then, the hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, which were the costliest on record at that point in history, $317 billion. Think about that. More than 2,000 earthquakes hit, the strongest at that time being in Oklahoma, in California, and also in Alaska. The worst mass shooting in American history occurred after the solar eclipse, with 58 people killed and 546 injured. Is this a coincidence? There is a wise saying that coincidence is God's way of being anonymous. Let us remember what America's first president, George Washington, warned its citizens about God's hand of protection. An excerpt of George Washington's inaugural address of 1789. Such being the impressions under which I have, in obedience to the public summons, repaired to the present station, it would be peculiar improper to omit in this first official act my fervent supplications to that Almighty Being who rules over the universe, who presides in the councils of the nations, and whose aid can supply every human defect, that his benediction may consecrate to the liberties and happiness to the people of the United States, a government instituted by themselves for these essential purposes, and may enable every instrument employed in its administration to execute with success the functions allotted to his charge. In tendering this homage to the great author, God, of every public and private good, I assure myself that it expresses your sentiments not less than my own. nor those of my fellow citizens at large, less than either. No people can be bound to acknowledge and adore the invisible hand which conducts the affairs of men more than the people of the United States. Every step by which they have advanced to the character of an independent nation seems to have been distinguished by some token of the agency in the important revolution just accomplished in the system of their united government, the tranquil deliberations and voluntary consent of so many distinct communities from which the event has resulted cannot be compared with the means by which most governments have been established without some return of pious gratitude, along with a humble anticipation of the future blessings which the past seem to presage. Okay, this is George Washington speaking. These reflections arising out of the present crisis have forced themselves too strongly on my mind to be suppressed. You will join with me, I trust, in thinking that there are none under the influence of which the proceedings of a new and free government can be auspiciously commenced. I dwell on this prospect with every satisfaction, with an ardent love for my country can inspire. Since there is no truth since there is no truth more thoroughly established than that there exists in the economy and course of nature indissoluble union between virtue and happiness, between duty and advantage, between the genuine maxims of an honest policy and the rewards of public prosperity, since we ought to no less be less persuaded that the smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained. And since the preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. The smiles of heaven cannot come down, my friends, when we act like we're acting right now. And yes, America, the sword is coming. In conclusion, the ultimate goal of Islam is to dominate the world through the governing of Sharia law. The Saudis and the Muslim Brotherhood goal to basically have Islamitize America, beginning with immigration, perpetuates through the infiltration of the U.S. government, the education system, the invasion of U.S. cities and towns. It is certain that the U.S. government has been infiltrated with Islamic influence, which has pierced the highest offices of the United States. Not only has the Islamic invasion infiltrated the U.S. government, the education system, but Muslims have also built hundreds of Wahhabi Sunni mosques throughout America. And just as we've discovered in the previous chapter with Europe, America is journeying down the same bloody death path of Islamization. Ultimately, the Islamic invasion of Satan's hunters in America will fulfill Jeremiah's prophecy, because approximately half of the world's Jewry lives in America. According to Jeremiah's prophecy, which will fulfill the everlasting covenants, the Jewish people will make Aliyah to the promised land at the end of the age, the period in which our generation is living. Europe will continue to be terrorized on a regular basis by Satan's hunters, and the years ahead for America will look the same. Although Donald J. Trump and his administration are taking or have taken or did take bold actions against allowing Satan's hunters into America, much more is needed to eliminate the Islamic invasion. He is one man with one team fighting decades of greedy corruption by Washington politicians at that time, 2016. Additionally, the president will only have 4, possibly 8 years to resolve the decades-long Islamic invasion. In my opinion, and according to God's prophetic timeline, the damage has been done and Satan's hunters are rooted within Americans' borders. Make no mistake, Jeremiah's prophecy of the hunters will continue to manifest until its complete fulfillment in all nations, including America, which will culminate with a massive aliyah from America to the promised land. I pray that just as the God of Israel protected Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David from Satan's original hunters, he will protect his faithful remnant, Jews and Gentiles, from Satan's end of the age hunters in America from this time forth and forevermore. Amen, amen, and amen. My friend, that'll wrap up chapter 7 and 8 that we just went through. And I know it's a lot of information and a lot of research. And the reason why we did that is to prove this prophecy that is just going to continue to gain speed. It's going to continue to gain prominence in the prophetic world, because this prophecy is just as important as the other prophecies that we talk about and everybody else talks about. This prophecy is not mentioned because of what it says, but we've got to pronounce it so that we can be the light to the Jewish people to warn them, okay, as well as stand by them, okay? That's the decision we all have to make as Americans. Whenever it happens, and you're starting to see it happen with all this anti-Semitic rhetoric and all these schools, universities, protests, everybody out there, we can see it with our own eyes right now. That's the reason we're doing the book series, is people need to understand this is the prophecy that makes people understand why we're going to see the anti-Semitism because of the hunters. The Jewish people will not go back to, why would they go back to Israel right now? Think about it. If America is safe and prosperous, which we still are pretty much, but if we're safe and prosperous, why in the world would they go back to the promised land? I mean, probably not, unless God provokes them back in their spirit. Okay, they would not, because look at Israel right now. You got war all around them. They're trying to eliminate them. Okay, but it's going to get so bad in America. The anti-Semitism is going to get so bad. The rhetoric's going to get so bad, and whatever else that comes is going to get so bad that they will go back to the land, even though they are surrounded by their enemies in Israel. They will at least be safe in Israel, because America will turn their back on them, just like all the other countries have. Eventually, I'm not saying right now, I'm not saying 10 years from now, eventually, America will turn their back on the Jewish people, because that's what is part of the prophecy. The prophecy is the Jewish people have to return. The American Jews will not get a pass, okay? The European Jews will not get a pass. None of us will get a pass. But for the Jewish people with the prophecy, they're going to go back to the promised land because of Jeremiah's prophecy of the fishermen and the hunters. Again, I love the Jewish people, but this is what the prophet has declared. And from what I can see and from what I can research, this is coming at us straightforward. It's already here. It's already been coming true. We just have to look at the evidence. We have to look at the facts to understand that this prophecy, just like the other prophecies in the Holy Bible, is gaining speed to its ultimate fulfillment. So we must understand that it's not a fun prophecy to talk about. All this research and stuff is not fun to go through. Thank you very much for your grace at getting tongue-tied reading all of this stuff, but I don't mind doing it. But just please have grace with me, because it's tough to kind of read all this stuff for a couple of hours, and we've already been on for 3 hours. But my friends, this prophecy, Americans have to wake up. Number one, with the right theology. We have to have the right theology, or we will not have the right eschatology most of the time. It's very rare when a person has the wrong theology and celebrating according to Rome and all this stuff with all this replacement theology, they will have a replacement eschatology, meaning they will look at Rome, which is astonishing because they're worshiping the wrong way, and they believe it's the Antichrist kingdom of Rome. Well, why are you worshiping according to the Antichrist kingdom? Okay, which is not, but that's what they believe. Remember, that's what they believe. I believe it's Islamic, of course. That's what the Bible says. But people with the wrong theology will be tended to be tempted, kind of like the European Christians. Whenever it happens, they will turn against the Jewish people. Okay, and we cannot stand for that. We got to stand with the Jewish people. Okay, read Matthew 25. Please read it. It's talking about his brethren first. We're all his brethren. But in that chapter, he's talking to the Jewish people. He's talking to the disciples who are Jewish, and talking to the people and the warnings of it. And then he warns the nations how they deal with Israel in Matthew 25. Sheep nations, goat nations. And then go read Joel 3. Yeshua is just confirming Joel 3. Okay, Joel 3 is the judgment of the nations. Matthew 25, judgment of the nations. Those are the same chapters. Joel 3, Matthew 25. That's when Yeshua sits on the Mount of Olives, puts his feet on the Mount of Olives. Zechariah 14, he judges the nations on how they treated Israel. Okay, we must understand that. And as far as America, we cannot have a diabolic, okay, or a bipolar relationship with Israel. Okay, we support Israel, but we give all the money to the people that want to kill them. I mean, you tell me. I mean, that's why we're seeing what we're seeing, is because the United States has funded Iran with billions of dollars, 150 billion, all this money that we've talked about before, recently 6 million or 6 billion more. You know, just keep giving money to Israel's enemies. I mean, America's government is a bipolar relationship with Israel because they're greedy and they get kickbacks. I mean, this is obvious. I mean, we just went through it with Prince Bandar, whatever his name is. the Saudi prince who basically, I mean, just think about these lobbyists. And my friends, and that's why I tell people, do not be compromised with supporting a politician. Okay. I mean, please don't be please don't be deceived with that, following any politician. I don't care who they are. Donald Trump, Obama, Biden, all of them. Do not be deceived in 100% compromise and all these stickers everywhere and build a shrine to these presidents. Okay. And all this stuff. Okay. Again, they're men. They're going to make wrong decisions because that's who they are. Okay. And they're greedy politicians. And that's why I say that, Republican and Democrat, every one of them. We went through it today. All the presidents, all of them. Okay. So we must understand that. I know that offends a lot of people out there because everybody loves Trump, everybody loves Obama, everybody loves Biden, everybody loves Bush. But guess what? These people are the problem. Okay. Not the cure. Okay. Because they've got to get Islam under control. They've got to get them out of our government. Okay. And they're all in our government, infiltrated in our government. And what started, I don't know if it will ever be stopped, because our election process and our presidential process is 4 to 8 years. And I don't think any man on earth or woman on earth can get America right in 20 years, okay? Because of where we are with our political environment. Until this political environment blows up, kind of like Egypt's did, okay, back in the Arab Spring, until the revolution comes for America, America is going to go down the same path. And there will be a revolution because things in America will get that bad. Why? Because of Jeremiah's prophecy of the fishermen and the hunters, and because of judgment on America for its sins. And my friends, America doesn't get a pass, okay? We don't get a pass by killing 60 million kids, okay? We don't get a pass by all these abominations. We don't get a pass by replacement theology and worshiping Yeshua in a paganistic way. I mean, we think we get a pass? America's been very blessed and very protected. We don't see these major events that are hurting the world. 70,000 people dying in an earthquake in Turkey and Syria. 10,000 people at one time dying in a flood in Libya. We don't see those kind of things over here. We've been protected by God. He's given us so much grace that we don't deserve. Okay, grace, mercy, love. He's given us all that, prosperity, protection. And the main reason of that is because of the Jewish people. Okay, let's get that squared away. I think I showed you that with the graph. America's prosperity increased tremendously after 1948. Why? Because Harry Truman, thank God. And he caught a lot of flack for this because a lot of people didn't want him to support Israel. But thank God for Harry Truman, President Truman, who supported Israel. And then look at America since 1948 with prosperity, with everything. I showed the graph earlier. I mean, it's unbelievable. So yes, there is a connection with the Jewish people and America's prosperity. Of course there is. That's not saying it's all about the Jewish people. Of course not. It's about the believers too, the Christians as well. Okay, we hopefully have tried to do our part as well, but we're under replacement theology as a church in America overall, and that's got to stop. Okay, so we must understand that America is in the balance. Okay, it's in the balance, just like every country is. Israel's in the balance. Everybody's in the balance, and the Lord will not relent. He's going to have his way with the nations. Read Zechariah 1, read the prophets, and I don't think he's going to turn back now with the times that we're living in. It has already started, and it will not end. So we must understand that, my friends. We've got to get engaged with the process. Enjoy your life. Of course, enjoy your life. You only get one of them, but pay attention to what God is doing as well. Okay. And not just build our own kingdoms here on earth. Let's do our part in God's kingdom because it's coming. It's not going to relent. We're on this path and we're going to head straight forward to it because of the times that we're living in, the end of the age. And all of these things have to happen. I mean, just take a look back at 2020 with COVID. Do you think the world has repented? Of course not. Abominations, abortion, homosexuality is just worldwide. I mean, everybody's gay today, it seems. I mean, everybody's got to be different. Everybody's got to be transgender. Everybody's got to be different with whatever it may be, and that's going to come to a halt. I mean, there's going to be tremendous judgment coming. You're already seeing it. It's just we've got to open our eyes. There's judgment, there's chastisement going on across the world, and the Lord will not relent right now. He's going to get his point across to all the inhabitants of the earth. He's tried to warn everybody on Passover on 2020. He locked everybody in to give everybody, 8 billion people were put on notice, okay, in 2020. And from what I can see is the world has said, no, we do not want to follow your ways. We want to do our own thing, kind of like the days of Noah, like the days of Lot. We want to do our own thing. We do not want to follow the Lord. Even the Christians do not want to follow God. Even the Jews do not want to follow God. Okay, only the remnant, only the true remnant who has Yeshua and led by the Holy Spirit, Torah observant. That is the key, okay? You can't take Yeshua without the commandments, okay? That is a different gospel that Paul preached about. That is a different gospel he said in Galatians and Corinthians. Okay, we've got to take Yeshua with the commandments, or don't take him at all. Because if you don't have Yeshua with the commandments, then that's not the true Yeshua, okay? That's a false Yeshua, okay? A false Jesus, if you will, because you got to take him with the commandments, just like he said. If you love him, keep his commandments. Very simple for everybody to understand. If you love him, keep his commandments. If you don't keep his commandments, then he does not think that we love him. It's that simple. Okay, you got to take John 14:15 for its word, and go read John 15 as well. Abide in him and he will abide in you. How do you abide in him? Abide in his word, he says. Torah, or you don't. Okay, so that's just, we really got to get to it, because America is right here. I think everybody can see that. I don't think this is not trying to be the prophet of the day. Jeremiah is the prophet of the day. Isaiah is the prophet of the day. Moses is the prophet of the day, and everybody else. That's who we have to listen to, is those prophets, not some prosperity prophet that everybody's going to be wealthy and healthy and ain't life grand. Those are false prophets, okay? The prophets of the day are talking about the prophets of the Bible, okay? That's who the true prophets are out there that you can listen to, are talking about Jeremiah, Daniel in their proper context, Ezekiel, Isaiah. Those are the prophets, and we are all just stewards of God's word, okay? And that's who are the prophets. So we must understand that judgment is coming to America. It's already here. I think one would be very deceived if they think America is living according to God. They'd be very deceived, okay? We are not, as a nation, living according to the Lord. Our laws are not from the Lord. Abortion, homosexuality in the law books, of course not. I mean, we're Babylon, we're Egypt. Of course, that's why people think we're Mystery Babylon, because of our actions and our behavior. So we have to pray for America's soul, and we've got to pray for the remnant to understand these things. Okay, the church is probably going to turn against the Jewish people because of replacement theology. But the remnant, the true remnant who understands biblical theology and biblical eschatology, we're the ones who have to stand up and be counted for at this time, for the Jewish people, to not to pacify them, not to pacify modern day Christianity, to tell everybody straight up, here's the deal, because guess what? Everybody's been trying to pacify all these groups for years and decades, and look at where we are. Okay, look at where we are with the pacifying of the Bible. Okay, straightforward. Okay, that's what we have to be, because that's what Jeremiah was. That's what Moses was. Yeshua certainly was that. And that's why people hated them. Okay, if they were on earth today, people would hate them. People would hate Yeshua. People would hate Jeremiah. People would hate Moses. That's what they did back then. Everybody loves them today because they don't think the prophets are talking about them. Guess what? The prophets are talking about me and you and everybody else to follow Torah, follow the ways of God. That's what Jeremiah would tell Christianity. That's what Jeremiah would tell Orthodox Judaism right now. And certainly Yeshua would as well. But America, as you can see through the stats, I hope you can see, America is in a dire position, okay? And it all goes into two things: politicians and the church. Those are the two things that are causing the ruin of America. Is the politicians have no clue. They're greedy. They're not loyal to American values or to the people. They're about themselves. They're selfish, and they're money grabbing. They're greedy people, okay, including the presidents, okay, Congress, all of them, okay, Republican and Democrat. And then as far as the church, look at where we are as a society. The morality of a nation falls on the church. Okay, that includes myself. Okay, so we have failed, okay, as a church. And if people don't realize that, that's the first step to getting right? Kind of like addiction. The first step to getting clean is to admit you got a problem, or I've got a problem, okay, that we have a problem. Once we identify we got a problem, then we can get healed, we can get fixed, okay? And until America's honest with themselves, including the church, honest with themselves with replacement theology, which is causing anti-Semitism because it's against the Jewish people from what people think, then we're never going to get right. So the politicians, the government, and the church will be the downfall of America. It will be because of what we're seeing today. So we'll continue, my friends, and we've got 2 more chapters. They are long chapters, but we'll go through the next chapter, which is, let me see which chapter is. I'm so caught into this. We'll go through the final hunter. Okay, so this is going to keep going to identifying the Antichrist, the final hunter, and then we'll close with the time of Jacob's trouble. And again, these are long chapters. So please bear with me. I'm not used to just reading all the time, so to speak, so I'll stumble over my words a lot. So just please forgive me, okay? And we'll see what this chapter brings. But America, my friends, that's an important chapter in the book, is America, because you can see the stats and you can see how all of this is aligning to a very bad time coming in America if we don't repent and if we don't get our act together, government and church. America is going to get it. We're going to get it if we do not repent, just like the Bible tells us to.
Lord, thank you for saving me, lost and found. Move me along the flood waters, higher ground. Lord, guide me in your arms so I don't